We are back, and yes, I look like a picnic table today, but that's okay. Dave Fleischman, Tom Leyden coming to you from Accelerated Performance Rehabilitation. We are in the Foxborough location. Always remember there's two locations, one here in Foxborough and, of course, the one in Westwood on Washington Street. A lot of injuries to talk about, a lot of big name injuries to talk about this week. It's interesting because a couple weeks ago we struggled to find one, which I guess is good. You don't want people to get hurt.
Sure.
But some that are season ending and some that people can relate to. So let's touch on the DeShaun Watson one first, the Browns quarterback, done for the year. And all you had to do was see that replay once to know that it was a ruptured Achilles. So we've seen a lot of it with Rodgers and with Cousins and now with Watson, that sudden stop as they try to accelerate forward. Can you prevent it? And if you can't prevent it, what's the next step here for DeShaun?
So for the average person, how do it's a great question. So the average person, how do you prevent it, right? So proper warm up, proper hydration, proper cool down. But unfortunately, injuries of this type are part of the game, as we're seeing, and some things are just unavoidable. It does happen. There's no one's right or wrong. Unfortunately, a person who plays the game the way DeShaun Watson plays, he's a very athletic guy, and you saw it. You could see that Achilles just snapped. You could see it in the stock. So tough injury. He's had a tough season. The team, they invested a lot of money in him, but he's gone for the year. And just like Aaron Rodgers, and he's a little younger than Aaron Rodgers, so he should come back fairly well.
Yeah, both he and Kirk Cousins as well. So it shows that these guys were able to recover, come back, and perform at a high level. Now, a really bad day for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, boy.
Because we saw Mike Evans score his 100th career touchdown, and then shortly thereafter, he was playing through the pain of a hamstring and then clearly aggravated it. So when you take that risk and go out and work or play on what is an already damaged hamstring, what sort of risk do you take, and what's he looking at now in terms of a hamstring injury?
So, yes. So it appeared that he had most likely what's called a high hamstring strain, which is at the proximal side versus distal, meaning up by his rear end versus behind his knee. And he was playing pretty good, but it did not look good when he went down. Most likely he's having an MRI today. It's going to show the extent of the damage, whether he has a full rupture of one of the three hamstring tendons or a partial rupture. There's just too many unknowns right now. If it's a full rupture, he could be looking at a season-ending surgery. If it's just a strain, they're going to probably keep him out for a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks.
You have to be conservative, though, right? My experience with hamstrings is as much as you want to try to push it and give him credit for trying to play last night and playing last night and scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, he did great.
But you got to be conservative. Otherwise, it's just going to be persistent, isn't it?
Yeah, well, a hamstring strain and a wide receiver is a very common injury, unfortunately, because of the nature of how they push off. That quick push off is usually what gets that hamstring. Yeah, it's a tough injury. That's certainly it's a tough loss for the Buccaneers. I mean, they lost their number 1 and their number 2 last night.
Good segue. I mean, I got here today, and Dave goes, "Oh, did you see Chris Godwin?" And I got to be honest, I didn't. I turned the game off. I went over to the Chargers-Cardinals game. So you just explain kind of what transpired there with Chris Godwin.
So Chris Godwin, last 40 seconds of the game, you're thinking that the game's over. They're down by 10. There's a lot of speculation. Should they have played him? Should they have sat there? I mean, they still had a statistical chance of coming back. They're calling it a dislocation. I mean, his leg completely was rotated almost 90 degrees, his left leg. Unfortunately, that's a season-ending injury. Usually when you have a dislocation of that nature, you're most likely going to have a fibula fracture associated with that, meaning that the outside of the bone, I think we've talked a lot about these injuries in the past. So he's looking at surgery. He's looking at hardware. He's out for the foreseeable future. He'll be back next year. This is what was it? Usually a 6 to 8 month recovery for something of this nature. But somebody else, who's the other one that got injured this year with the ankle? And they're saying he's going to be back for the playoffs if they make it.
Are you talking Hutchinson?
Yes.
I'm not buying that yet.
No, I'm not buying that yet either. I think that's a long shot. I would like to see what his X-rays look like. That would really tell us.
Yeah, that's one thing about Dave. When
Yeah.
you do come into APR,
Yeah.
Dave wants to see the work. He's like, "Can I
Oh,
see
yeah.
the X-rays? I got to see
Yeah.
it." And then you can always, "Oh, that was a good surgery," which is great because it's good to know that there's somebody who's on top of it and understands the whole process. And you
Well,
and
yeah.
your team definitely does.
Sure. I mean, with any, doesn't regardless of the case, I want to see the X-rays. I want to see the op report. I want to see what the surgeon did, because based on what they did, it's going to tell us how you're going to heal, or how with the length of the healing is going to take. You know, is it a displaced fracture? Is it a non-displaced fracture? How's the healing? So there's a lot to be learned by reading the op reports, by looking at the diagnostic reports, and we do all that here. You know?
Incredible. Dave Fleischman from APR Physical Therapy, Westwood, Foxborough. Check him out at aprpt.com, and we'll see you next week.